Welcome to Longmont Performing Arts Initiative's podcast series, Longmont Backstage. This is Jill Harrison. In this first series of podcasts, we'll be introducing you to the music or artistic directors of each of the founding member performing arts groups that make up the Longmont Performing Arts Initiative, or as we commonly refer to ourselves, LPI. For more information about LPI, please go to our website, longmontperforms.org. There you will also find information and web links to each of our founding member performing arts groups. I do want to take a moment and give a special thank you to Todd Eichhorn for providing recording space for this podcast today in his facility. It's called The Experience, and it's above La Vita Bella. Okay, today our guest is Elliot Moore, music director of the Longmont Symphony Orchestra. Elliot, welcome and thanks for being willing to be the first guest.
Jill, thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's our delight, and let's get right down to it. We're going to have a lot of new listeners, and I'm sure they'd love to find out a little bit about you. So if you could share your background, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, I was born in Anchorage, Alaska, and I started playing the cello when I was 3 years old. I come from a musical family, so my mom plays cello. My mom plays piano, and my sister, I have an older sister, she used to play the violin. Uh-huh. And so it was sort of a natural fit for me to play the cello, like that we could play piano trios together. Yeah. And it took me a little while to actually really fall in love with the cello, but eventually I did, and I started practicing a lot. And went off to school in Cleveland, where I studied cello beginning at the age of 16. And then eventually I moved actually to Switzerland, where I continued my education in cello performance. However, at some point when I was in Switzerland, I actually stopped playing the cello. And this was sort of a big turning point in my life, because after all these degrees and many, many concerts and whatnot, to sort of give up the cello was a big thing for me. And after about 9 months or so of not playing the cello, I really began to miss music and having music in my life. And I was thinking more and more about sort of what music meant to me. And what I found is that what music can do for a community is incredible, I think. And I had been interested in conducting, and I had always thought about orchestras as being sort of a symbol for what a community is. In other words, people, how they listen to one another, how they react to one another, how they play off of one another. Those were things that I had been thinking a lot about, and I decided to get more into conducting, and that would be more my musical voice rather than through playing the cello. And so it was around that time that I made a switch to conducting, and I haven't looked back since.
You still play the cello?
It's very rare that I play the cello. It's funny, I play it for friends' weddings. I play it on very special occasions. If there's something that maybe I can do with the symphony, sometimes I'll play with a guest artist or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I have to be honest, I find it very challenging to keep up the skills of cello playing while meeting all the demands of being music director of the Longmont Symphony. I think it's very challenging to keep an instrument up at that level of performance that let's say I at least used to have, mm-hmm. As well as all the rigors of score study that come with conducting.
That makes sense, although I'm sure your background as a musician having to do with a string instrument, I'm sure that has given you tremendous insight.
I think that certainly as I work with orchestras, being able to speak to the strings and the needs of the strings is something that has served me very well in my career as a conductor. And I think that it's maybe a little bit easier to learn all the theoretical things about the winds than it is to learn all the theoretical things about strings. There's a lot that goes into playing a string instrument, and what kind of bow stroke, and is it on-ish or off-ish, and how do you call those different types of strokes? There's a lot that goes into it. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, terrific. Well, I think it's a great background. I have a lot of admiration for you. I was a violinist when I was a child. Haven't touched it in more years than I care to admit. But I do have a love, especially for stringed instruments, because of that opportunity I had as a child. So I always kind of tune in a little bit when I'm listening. Yeah. So you are currently the music director of the Longmont Symphony Orchestra. Tell us about how that all came to be.
There was a job opening for music director of the Longmont Symphony, I'm going to say about probably 4 years ago now. And I applied. I think I was one of 65, 70 or so applicants from, and I believe it was around the world. I think that it was a international, rather they had international applicants. Mm-hmm. And eventually, through various different, interviews and whatnot, they narrowed it down to 4 finalists, and we all came here to rehearse and perform with the Longmont Symphony, and I was very fortunate to have been selected as as the winning candidate. And so my wife and I, we moved from Detroit, where we met and lived at the time, and we moved here to the region and have just loved being here ever since. So, and in fact, I'm very excited that we're actually welcoming our daughter here. So we're pregnant and very excited that our daughter will be born here in Colorado.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
What happy news.
It is very happy news.
Are you expecting her before the end of the year? Or?
Yes, she's expected on November 4th.
Well, it's coming quick.
It is coming quick. You don't. Tell me about it.
Well, that's terrific. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So here you are. You're in Longmont. That's a big change from Detroit, obviously.
It is.
But now you've been with the Longmont Symphony for.
It's been 2 full seasons. I am now beginning my 3rd season as music director of the Longmont Symphony.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, for those people who are listening. I can't believe they don't know anything about the Longmont Symphony, but let's start from square one.
Sure.
Tell us about what is the Longmont Symphony? Who's in there?
Sure.
How does it all work?
Well, I think that one of the things that is really, in some ways important to say is that the group was founded in 1966, so the group is 53 years old this year, and I think that it's not actually the oldest. I believe that the oldest group here in Longmont is the Longmont Chorale, which I think is going on 80 some odd years, which is very impressive. But the symphony has been around for 53 years, and it originally was made up mostly of community members, and that is still in some degree the case. I would say we have members that come as far away as South Denver. We have members that are coming from Greeley and Fort Collins, from all really around the region. But one of the things I think that we really care about is making sure that this orchestra has a Longmont identity. So we don't want to have everyone commuting in. We want it to be very pro-Longmont. And so we do our best to assure that our members have some connection or at least a commitment to this area. And I think that that's something that we care about and that we also want to continue to foster.
That sounds like an admirable goal. And of course, Longmont is growing by leaps and bounds. I can imagine that the symphony recognizes that and probably is looking to see some additional opportunities come forward.
Well, one of the things that I think that we can also sort of all agree on is that there are obviously some wonderful universities with great music programs in the area, and a lot of the talent that they're producing, a lot of these people are actually moving to places like Longmont because it's a very desirable place to live. And I think that as Longmont increases in size and in sort of the options that are available for people who move here, I think that we are going to continue to see sort of an expanded capacity for the level of artistry and the kinds of artists that are attracted to Longmont. So it's a very exciting time for Longmont.
It is, and as the population grows, what I've personally seen is that the number of people looking for quality performing arts groups in their community, that number is growing at the same time.
And one of the things that I really firmly believe is that is one of the key elements that makes a community an amazing place to live, is culture. Without culture, people are going to always be leaving their place where they live to go seek out culture. And I think that it's so great that Longmont has such a vibrant performing arts scene and has so much to offer in terms of culture, because that does keep people here in Longmont. And what that means on a little bit more sort of technical level is that we're keeping the dollars, Longmont dollars in Longmont. And even for that matter, we're attracting in other dollars to Longmont because we do have this level of performing arts.
That makes perfect sense. Absolutely.
It's very important for a community. And to see it here, I love it. I love being here.
Well, we love having you.
Well,
here.
thank you, Jen.
So let's focus in on the beginning of your third season. Mm-hmm. Here it is. Can you tell us a little bit about your concept? Do you have a theme, that kind of thing?
Yes, we have a theme. The theme is Music is Life. And maybe it's a great sort of way for me to at least begin talking about Music is Life. Our season, or the thread that takes us through the season, is with our first performance. It's coming up here very shortly. It's the big piece that we'll be performing is Saint-Saëns' Third Symphony, the so-called Organ Symphony, which is a piece that for me has all sorts of sort of elements about life in it. It has angst, it has joy, it has sort of lyricism, but it also culminates in triumph. And I love sort of the story, even though it's not a programmatic piece. I do love the process and the journey of this work. And I think that, all of that sort of ties back to life. I think that the organ, for that matter, also ties to life in terms of how it is an instrument that requires air. And there's another piece that goes with all of this, which is that I think that it's in some ways a spiritual performance.
Oh yeah.
We're performing also Poulenc's Organ Concerto, and that's a spiritual work, while not maybe a religious work. It does have elements of spirituality in Bach's Passacaglia and Fugue in C minor. Also, that work, I was kind of inspired to program it when I was watching recently Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris engulfed in flames. And of course, the survival of the organ was a big deal to all of us music lovers.
Yes.
But to see how people were coming together with music at that point, and they were coming together to mourn, but also to be together. And that was a very inspiring sort of juxtaposition of people coming together for culture and to recognize the importance of culture, and also, of course, the cathedral engulfed in flames. So this was, in some ways, the impetus for this opening performance was all of that, and it was within that context that I created it. But there are certainly other performances that I'm very excited about. One of the ones I'm actually the most excited about is one that we have at Stewart Auditorium, which is the performance includes 3 vocal soloists performing Stravinsky's Pulcinella, and it's actually ballet music. The costumes were designed by Picasso, and some people get a little nervous when they hear the composer Stravinsky. But what I'm happy about is that it's actually taken from 17th century Italian music, and it's just beautiful music that's fun, engaging, light, and to sort of have this performance juxtaposed from the Saint-Saëns Organ Symphony it's kind of a neat juxtaposition of light and something that has more gravitas to it.
That sounds delightful, and you happen to hit upon two pieces that I love.
Oh, well, I'm glad to know you love Stravinsky.
I do, and I love Saint-Saëns as well, and his Organ Symphony has been a favorite of mine for a very, very long time.
Mine as well.
Yeah, well, cool. So you've mentioned a couple of these pieces. Obviously, they're very near and dear to your heart,
Mm-hmm.
with a story behind them. Has the LSO performed these before, or are these new pieces for them?
I believe that the Bach Passacaglia Fugue will be the first time that they perform that.
Mm-hmm.
I also believe that the Poulenc organ concerto will be the first time. I was not able to find any previous record of them performing that.
Interesting.
And I can't say that I know anything about a performance of Stravinsky's Pulcinella here. So it's amazing that in 53 years there's still an abundance of music that we can bring to Longmont for the first time. And sometimes what I find is that a lot of these symphonies feel very fresh. In fact, we'll be performing Beethoven's Fourth Symphony coming up in early, I think it's early March. And as far as we can tell, this is the very first time that Beethoven's Fourth Symphony will ever be performed in Longmont, which is incredible when you think about it. But so I find that a lot of these pieces that are, Beethoven's Fourth Symphony and some Mozart symphonies,
Mm-hmm.
My predecessors tended to shy away from some of those pieces, and I think that it's a wonderful opportunity to bring these pieces here because they're very fresh here in Longmont.
Well, I'm personally thrilled. I can't wait.
Well, me too.
I just think that's super. To get away from the specifics of the LSO, one of the big things that the Longmont Performing Arts Initiative finds very important is the concept of live performance.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to hear what you have to say, with the comparison between attending a live performance versus listening to something, maybe hearing it on audio or through other media. What's your take?
My take is that there's magic that happens in live performances, whether it's the timing of a certain phrase that can be maybe a little bit more controlled in a recording session,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's just being in the hall. Or sometimes what I feel is that I was talking about this a little bit earlier, where I think that an orchestra is a symbol for community, and when everybody comes together and listens, there's something very beautiful that happens. It's in some ways sort of a breaking of bread. It's a coming together. And having a shared experience versus having an experience that, you have just by yourself, either in a room or maybe with Bose, what's it called? The noise canceling
Mm-hmm.
headphones. Excuse me. I think that it is really incredible to have that sort of shared experience and a coming together of people. But there's something else that I also believe about this that's very important, which is that a symphony orchestra can be so much more to the community than just live performances or just symphonic performances of these great masterpieces. What I believe a symphony orchestra can do is work with mothers and their children. I believe that a symphony orchestra can work with people who are ill or people that want to get better. I think that a symphony orchestra can be all kinds of different things than just great performances of great masterworks. And that's also why I think that live performances are so critical, is that, yes, that's a large part of what we do, but without those live performances, it doesn't give us an avenue to do some of these other things, like working with children, like talking about how music can bring people together. All of these things, they all go together. And so I think that in order for a symphony orchestra to really reach its potential, live performances are a critical part, but I think that also the other parts where we're in the community, where we're making music for people that may not be able to come to the symphony, I think that that is also a critical part of what a symphony orchestra can be today.
Well, certainly you have several programs that are ongoing right now.
We do.
And you want to talk a little bit about those things?
Well, we have educational components to the Longmont Symphony, which I am a big fan of. We bring every single fifth grader into the Longmont Symphony to hear a live performance, which, again, I think that's incredible. And I'm always very cognizant that when we have those students, the goal is not so much to teach them. The goal is to create the space so that they can fall in love with music. That's what we want to do. We want to give them a great experience. But one of the things that I'm really excited about right now is that we opened up the possibility for a few string players who are in high school to join the Longmont Symphony. And the reason that I think this is so important is because Longmont has, first of all, incredible music education, and we are so fortunate to live in a place that has such great music educators. But they also have students there, and these students, some of them are going to become the next generation of great musicians.
Sure.
And so to be able to allow them the opportunity to start playing in a professional orchestra is a wonderful experience for them, and there aren't many other communities where they can actually get that.
Yeah.
And so that's also something that we worked very hard to create that opportunity for young people to have begin getting experience playing some of this kind of repertoire. Another thing that this is one of my big things really, is the Gentle Nutcracker, which I'm very passionate about. It's a performance for differently abled individuals who may be on the autistic spectrum or may have other physical difficulties. And we allow them to come in sort of as they are. If they need to make sounds or scream or yell or vocalize, as we like to call it, then that's completely acceptable, and we make many, many changes to accommodate these differently abled individuals. And of course, I mentioned I'm about to become a parent, and one of the things that I think is so great about this is that, yes, it's for these individuals, but it's also for their family members. And what this allows for their families is to come to a performance and be accepted as a family, and they don't need to worry about leaving because their child is making noise or kicking the seat. We take away all of those worries, and I think that for a parent, it's very powerful to be able to have these kinds of experiences when you're not used to being able to have them. Yeah. And so that would be an example of how I think there's an intersection with music and healing. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think is very important and that I want to explore more and more as I continue my tenure with the Longmont Symphony.
Fantastic. Well, that's a perfect lead-in to my next question.
Okay.
So what vision do you have for the LSO? Short-term, long-term, whatever?
It's funny. I was just asked to present my vision to the Longmont Symphony Board. Mm-hmm. And there were a few things that I found in thinking about vision that were critical. One is sort of what amenities do we have here? Do we have enough talent? Do we have enough people to come to the symphony, to enjoy the symphony? And as I mentioned before, we are so lucky to have these schools that are producing great talent in the region. And Longmont is growing, and the arts in Longmont are growing, and it's sort of this perfect storm, if you will, of a city's ability to support a symphony orchestra. And when I think about, some of the great symphony orchestras in the United States, there's San Francisco or Chicago or the orchestra, New York Philharmonic. These are incredible orchestras. And I have to admit, I don't think that the Longmont Symphony is ever going to sort of be at that level of orchestra. And I think of those orchestras like red wines. There's a wine that I don't think I've ever had, and I probably will never have, called Chateau Lafite Rothschild. And yes. That is each bottle is probably several $1,000s, which is why I probably will never taste a bottle of this wine. But I think of those orchestras in New York and Chicago and San Francisco as kind of the red wine orchestras. I don't see why the Longmont Symphony, though, can't be the greatest white wine orchestra. And I think that how we change the paradigm of what an orchestra can be, whether it's doing more engagement with individuals who are differently abled, or whether it is exploring the intersections of healing and music, or whether it is connecting mothers and their children with lullabies that they actually compose themselves and sing to their children at night. I think that there is a whole realm of what a symphony orchestra can be. And while I don't think that we will ever be the greatest red wine orchestra, I think that we can be the greatest white wine orchestra in the world. That's my vision for the Longmont Symphony.
I think it's a great analogy. I like that.
Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Here's my next question. Mm-hmm. We are doing this on behalf of LaPi, the Longmont Performing Arts Initiative. What can we do as LaPi to help you to attain your vision for the LSO?
Well, one of the things that I see here in Longmont is while we are very, we're so grateful at the Longmont Symphony to have Vance Brand Civic Auditorium and, of course, Stewart Auditorium to perform in, we don't have a tremendous amount of control over the dates, and that creates some issues. And an example of the issues that creates is our ability to program and to engage really high-level guest artists to come into Longmont. Often that takes 2 to 3 years of scheduling, and so we're not able to do that. We're really just scheduling a few months in advance. And that limits what we're able to do in terms of bringing in incredible artistry to Longmont. And I think that also as the symphony grows and we continue to expand our budget and we continue to further our artistic abilities and reach into the community, we're going to need to have a little bit more control over our dates and of performances. And of course, one of the big projects that the Longmont Performing Arts Initiative is working on is building a performing arts center. Mm-hmm. And I think that element is going to be a game changer for the Longmont Symphony, but I would also say for Longmont as a whole. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's been said is that this would really put the arts on the map in Longmont, and I think that that's absolutely correct. I think it's a little bit challenging to be the greatest white wine orchestra in the world if we can't control our performance dates. And so these are the kinds of things that will help us as we work together. There's something else, though, that I think is very important, which is that my vision really for the Longmont Symphony is not just a vision for the Longmont Symphony. It's to be sort of under the umbrella of, maybe a better way of saying this would be to be uniting all different kinds of performing arts under one umbrella, right? So that we can speak with a more unified voice mm-hmm. for the arts and what the arts can do for a community. Mm-hmm. And I see that happening with LaPi, and I love the fact that that's going on, and I want to say I support that wholeheartedly, because I think that orchestra is just one part of performing arts. And of course there's ballet and there's opera, which we don't yet have. I'll say that louder. We don't yet have an opera. We want an opera in Longmont. But, whether it's choir or band, all these different things, all these different elements, mm-hmm. It does something when we come together. Mm. And I think that it's very powerful, and I think it's very beautiful. And I think it's better when we are together versus when either we see each other as maybe competition for various dates or various performances, that somebody has to choose this or that. I think that there are plenty of people out there to come to all of our performances, and I think that the more we lift each other up, the stronger we all become.
It makes sense to me, certainly. I can see that having that unified voice And there's so much overlap anyway. People who love orchestra, who love classical music, who love Stravinsky, who
love jazz, by the way.
Who love jazz,
yes. Which is me, just in case anyone was wondering. I love jazz.
Yes. It's not that you have to make a choice. You don't. You can love it all, and you can go and appreciate it all. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of what La Pai is all about.
Absolutely.
So, final question for you. Do you have a message that you want to put out there for the listening audience?
I think that if there were any sort of message that I have, it's that I believe in music's power to lift up a community. Mm-hmm. I say often that music can transform a community, and of course that extends to visual art and to ballet. I think we can all transform our community through the arts. And one of the things that I'm so happy about is seeing the response from people in Longmont getting that. They're actually getting that we can transform our community through music, through the arts. And if I had any sort of message for everyone, it's that believe it, because it's possible. We've seen it over and over and over in other communities, and I think that Longmont is poised for greatness, and that if we can build this performing arts center, I think that we will do something incredible for the economy of Longmont. I think we will do something great for everyone in Longmont. I think we will do something great for the region, and I think that the arts in that sense will have transformed Longmont, and it's a dream of mine and one that I know is possible. And so I hope that everyone else sees that possibility, because it's right there, it's right in front of us, and all we have to do is keep putting one foot in front of the other, and it will happen.
I don't know that anybody could have said it any better than you did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time to be with us and be part of this podcast, Elliot.
Well, listen, Longmont is an unbelievable place to live, and we're just so overjoyed to be here. So thank you so much, Joan.
Absolutely. Well, personally, I'm delighted that he's part of our performing arts community here in Longmont, and we look forward to an inspiring season from the LSO. For more information on the Longmont Symphony Orchestra, including purchasing tickets to their performances, please go to their website. It is longmontsymphony.org. That's longmontsymphony.org. And please watch for additional Longmont Backstage podcasts on our website, which is longmontperforms.org. longmontperforms.org. Again, this is Jill Harrison. Thank you so much for listening, and may the performing arts bring you joy every day. Thanks again. Bye now.